All right, so again, thanks for coming to our brief little webinar here to talk about the ins and outs or the nuts and bolts of interlibrary loan. So in order to facilitate our conversation, we're gonna go to a little research guide that's been developed. And if at any point you have questions or you are not seeing anything on the screen or you think you're not seeing the right thing, please unmute and let me know so that we can all be on the same page and be looking at what we should be looking at. So in order to facilitate the conversation, we're going to go to a research guide that's very handily been developed that discusses interlibrary loan. So by clicking on that research guides menu on the left-hand side of the library homepage, we're brought to our list of research guides, and there is one that is dedicated to interlibrary loan. So first of all, I think when we discuss interlibrary loan, it's like, well, what is interlibrary loan? Why does it exist? So very basically, the reason it exists is because no library, regardless of the resources they have, can realistically afford to buy everything that has ever been published, whether it's in physical format, digital format, and make that available to its clientele, its users, its patrons. And because of that, and you know, not every library would want to buy everything just because, you know, libraries, customers are different. So for instance, you know, here at St. Mary of the Woods College, we don't have like a program in engineering. So we don't necessarily need to buy engineering resources in the off chance that one of our faculty members or students would want that particular resource. And so it doesn't make sense for us to even get that type of material, even if we could, if we had, you know, bottomless pockets and could buy anything we wanted to. Now, over at Rose, certainly those are the types of materials they would want to focus on supplying to their students. So, you know, because of limited resources, because of different missions and purposes, libraries don't buy everything under the sun that's ever been published. Instead, because of our nature, our kindness and our good-hearted nature, we as librarians have decided that we will share resources with one another so that if there's something that one of my patrons needs that your library has, I can ask for that and you will let me borrow that. Or send me a copy of it, and I can make it available to that particular customer. And likewise, you know, if there is something that I have in my collection that another library does not have, that their customer needs, then they can ask me, and I will send a copy or let them borrow that, so that their customer has what they need when they need it. And so, basically, interlibrary loan reduced down to kindergarten level is just sharing, right? It's all about sharing in that reciprocal partnership, reciprocal agreement. So there are some very formal definitions of what interlibrary loan is, but basically it's the idea that it's this process of sharing materials with one another from library to library. And the reason we do it is because you know, we don't own everything that we possibly could own, and we realize that research needs are sometimes variable, sometimes nuanced and esoteric. And so we want to make some mechanism available to get resources for our customers, for our clientele that we just don't have immediate access to. So with all of that philosophical definitions and all of that groundwork laid, we're going to get into some of the practicalities of our interlibrary loan service here. And some of these principles apply to interlibrary loan services regardless of the library. So this is really not anything incredibly unique or specific to us, but these are kind of the general ground rules that we follow here with our interlibrary loan operations. So interlibrary loan is a service that's available to current students, faculty, and staff. So if you are a graduate of the Woods or a guest user, then interlibrary loan is a service that is no longer available. And instead, you would facilitate interlibrary loan requests through another library, such as a public library. So the things that you can request through interlibrary loan, you know, fundamentally, you can request anything. Whether or not you'll get it is another question. But typically, the types of items you can request are articles, books, book chapters, audiovisual materials, so on and so forth. Textbooks are not eligible for requesting through interlibrary loan for various reasons. Number one, typically a lot of libraries don't buy textbooks because they're quickly outdated, they're very expensive, and so it's just it doesn't make financial sense to incorporate textbooks into your regular library collection. And second of all, even if a library has purchased a textbook, chances are that's going to be in like a course reserve collection or something that's really not accessible to those who are not affiliated with that particular library or that institution. So it's not that it's just forbidden entirely. It's just that it's very unlikely that you will be able to obtain a textbook through interlibrary loan. So that's why we have said they're just ineligible for requests. There are a couple of other formats and types of publications that while you can request an interlibrary loan, they are a bit more difficult to get. So AV materials are a little iffy, just because DVDs, Blu-rays are a bit more delicate and fragile. So some libraries are not willing to lend those. And then another big thing is theses and dissertations, because usually there's only one copy of those that exist, unless it's been published online somewhere. And so if there's only one library that owns that, they're not very likely to send that to us. But I guess my rule of thumb is that it doesn't hurt to try. So if you want to take a chance on requesting a textbook or dissertation, by all means, you're welcome to do that. I would say just don't hold your breath that that's something you'll get. So before you submit an interlibrary loan request, it's always a good idea to check the library's resources. So last month, we did a short little webinar on how to search for materials in the library. And then the month before that, I even showed you how to look to see if things are available full text in the library's collection. So it's a good idea to check and see if the content that you're after is not something that's already available to you. And that will just speed up things for yourself. So you won't be waiting on me to get your request and look through it and go through that process and then to respond back to you. So our interlibrary loan services, so essentially that's me and another person that handle our interlibrary loan requests. And so we're doing that during regular business hours. So that's Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. So on the evenings, on the weekends, on holidays and breaks, we're not processing interlibrary loan requests. So just realize that adds to the length of time that it takes to process interlibrary loans with those limitations. So this next paragraph is the biggie, right? So how long does it take once I ask for something through an interlibrary loan to get it? And the answer is it just depends, and that's the best answer that I can give, because there are a lot of variables at play. There's the type of material that you request, how widely held it is, if it's available electronically, so on and so forth. So there are all these variables at play that really impact how quickly that request is turned around. So the basic guidelines are, if you're requesting an article or an ebook, chapter, or something like that, I would say budget 3 to 5 days, 3 to 5 business days for that request to be processed and for it to be filled. That is, for you to actually have the copy in hand, give it about 3 to 5 days. In all truth, in most instances, it's a lot quicker than that. It's usually a day, 2 days max. If you're requesting like an article in an e-journal that is widely held by other institutions, then the turnaround time for that is typically going to be within 24 hours. Like I said, that's typical, but then there are those atypical situations where it might take 7 days, 10 days, even longer to get an article, just depending upon, again, all the variables at play. But typically, budgeting 3 to 5 days should give you enough time to get the content. When it comes to physical items, so books, DVDs, and things like that, you need to budget a bit longer because there's that extra step in the process of sending something via mail or via UPS or FedEx or something like that. So we say budget 7 to 10 days to get a physical item processed and to be made available to you. So the moral of that little paragraph is to plan ahead, right? Make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to receive those items through interlibrary loan so that you can use them for whatever it is you're doing, whether it's an assignment for a class or research for a paper or whatnot. Just give yourself ample time in case something goes awry and it takes a lot longer to get those things. So this little note here about same-day requests. So if you request something, right now at 12:15 in the afternoon, and you say you need it by the end of today, it's very likely that's not going to happen. And if you're requesting something tonight at like 10 o'clock, and you say you want that tomorrow morning, again, it's not that I can't submit the request, it's just that it's not very likely that that's going to happen. So if that need by date is the same day, or if you're submitting after hours and it's the next day, that request, it says it will be canceled, but essentially it's just not feasible to fill the request. So again, the idea is plan ahead and make sure you're giving yourself plenty of time to get the content that you need. And then last of all interlibrary loan requests must be submitted via TPASA, which is our interlibrary loan management system, which we're going to take a look at here in just a minute. So if you send a request via email, it won't be processed. What I'm going to ask you to do is to click on the link and create your account, and then we'll facilitate that request. But all requests are going to go through TPASA, which is our interlibrary loan management system. So another thing to note, and this kind of goes back to what I mentioned a few minutes ago, that one thing you can do is you're looking for resources and you think you might need to request it through interlibrary loan, is to take a minute and see if that content isn't available somewhere online via open access, because the number of publications being issued under open access licenses is growing. And so it may be that something you're looking for, especially if it's newer, especially in these days, if it's related to COVID-19, those things are going to be made available freely online. And so it's a good idea to check for those. So this is one tool that you can use to check for online availability of resources that might be available open access. So I'm going to grab a little title over here to show you how this will work. So here's the title of my article. You can put in there as it says, the title, the DOI, the URL, and ask it to find this article. And it confirms, this is the article that I'm looking for, and it says there is. So there's a free copy available online that I can open in a new tab. If this were not available open access, then that would not appear, but I would have the option to get it through interlibrary loan, and I could complete the request by clicking this button. So I always tell students and others that when they're looking for things online in library databases, to Google the title, click on the URL or the DOI and see if it's not available online for free. And I always caution, make sure that if you're doing that, the source that says it's available for free online is legitimate, because there are sources online where you get what I call bootlegged research. So someone has taken an article from a library database and illegally and unethically posted it online purportedly for free when in fact it is not. The nice thing about using this particular tool that you're seeing here is that it's only looking for the free content in legitimate sources. And so there's that little added layer of assurance and insurance by using this particular tool that you won't get if you're just Googling titles or DOIs or URLs. So I'm going to jump down here and talk about fees. So interlibrary loan is a free service to those who are affiliated with the college currently. So generally, these transactions that are happening are free of cost. And so that's great. But there are instances where some libraries will request payment for content that they're supplying. I generally avoid those institutions because we lend items for free, and so we expect others to lend to us for free. But if there's a situation where we need to pay for that, then the library assumes the cost for obtaining those materials. So you will never pay, I won't say never, but in most instances, if not all instances, you won't pay for any materials that are obtained through interlibrary loan. All right, so now we're going to jump into TPASA and looking at that, but we're going to go about it a different way. So there's a direct link to it, but what I'm going to do is come to this search that I've done in a library database and remind you of how these requests will likely happen on your end. So here in my search result list, again, by way of reminder, When I see this view full text link, that means that the full text of this article is available to me, just not on this particular platform, which is EBSCOhost. So by clicking on that link, it's going to show me where I do have access, and I'll just be dropped into that article. So the request a copy link is there kind of as insurance, because sometimes that link resolver doesn't work as it should sometimes. And so either there's a broken link there, or something has happened in the license and the content is no longer available in the database. And so that request a copy link is there just in case you need it as a plan B. So here I am at this article. There is no full text available for me anywhere. And so what I've done, I've gone in and I have taken this DOI and I put it into that little tool that I have on my LibGuide, and I saw that this is legitimately not available online for me for free via open access. So in this case, I need to request this article via Interlibrary Loan. So by clicking on this link, it will, my session has timed out. I'm sorry about that. Let me refresh my session here. I'm going to grab my link and put this guy in here and just start things over. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. And this should work, I hope this time. Yes. So here, as we're doing with all of our online resources, we have to sign in with our St. Mary Louis College credentials. And here I am in TAPASA. So this is our interlibrary loan system that we're using. So the nice thing about clicking on that link, request a copy from within these databases, and those are available on all EBSCO databases and all ProQuest databases that we subscribe to, you'll find that request a copy link, is that it brings over all of that information about this particular work that we want. So we don't have to worry about trying to remember the article title, the author, the issue, and all of that. It's already populated for us, which is great. However, there are some things that we do have to decide here. So by default, since we're looking for an article, we're going to have a service type of a copy. And I can supply a need before date. So remember, the rule of thumb, the guidance here is to give yourself 3 to 5 days to receive a copy. So if you want to put a need before date in there, you can, but it's not required. You don't have to. You can put any comments in there that you want to. And then it's already populated my information because I have an account already. So the last thing I need to do is put in there what my status is and my department. And then I submit that request, and that request is complete. The nice thing about using this system is that you receive communications every step of the way. So when you submit a request, you'll receive a notification that that request has been received, it's being processed. And then any actions taken upon that request, you will receive an email as well. So once it's been received and it's available for you, you'll receive that email. So when I first come in here, if I'm coming in just to view what I've requested, so if I'm clicking that link to TAPASA, whether it's on the library's main webpage or it's on the Interlibrary Loan LibGuide, this is where it will drop me into. So, because we clicked on the link to request a copy, that's why it dropped us into the form that we completed. Otherwise, I'm going to drop into all of the content that I've requested. So as we go through, I'm going to point out just a few things here. So this first one that's listed is a book that I requested, and the library has decided to actually purchase this rather than obtain it from another library. And so I get all that information notified here on the right with these status updates. And then I can look at all the details of my request by clicking on the link associated with it. So here, I'm told all of those details, and here are my communications that I've gotten about this particular request. So I received a text message that it's being processed, and I received an email that this request is being processed. And so you'll find that detailed level of information for every single request here. Here's another book that I requested that's been received by the library. So that was another purchase that's been closed out. And so I have that book and am happily reading through that. And then here's an article that I've requested. So whenever we request articles that another library supplies to us, we have a limited time frame in which to view the content. So here it tells me that I have 4 views left. The total number of views that I get is 5. So I have 4 of those remaining. And on April 8th, this link will expire. So in a couple of days, this will be the status of that particular request that I have up there. That link has been expired. So what I need to do is click on this and then download the PDF and save it somewhere so that I can have access to it in perpetuity. So when you're getting these types of requests, make sure that you take that little step and save that particular file for future use, because eventually the link will expire. This particular ebook is one that we have access to through a library database, and so the link is available to view. That will not expire because I will always have access to that content through the library, through another database, and so I can just click on that and obtain that particular content. So here's a request that was canceled for some reason, and the reason was that it was a test. So I was just playing around with the system. And then there's that particular article that's been expired. So the last thing we want to show you within Deposit is your profile page. So this is where you set up how we communicate with you. So by default, your SMWC email address is your primary email address, and that's the one where you'll receive communications, unless you change it to an alternate email address. So you can put in your Gmail address there if that's where you want these things to go instead, and that's perfectly acceptable. If you want to receive those text messages about your requests, then you'll put it in there, and you'll have to follow that pattern that's established there. It auto-populates with all the country code and the parentheses and all that. But you can opt in to receive those text messages by putting your phone number in there and just saving that contact information to set that all up. Okay, so I believe that is it. Like I said, it was a very quick introduction to Interlibrary Loan and the tools that we're using to facilitate all of that. So does anybody have any questions about their experiences or anything else related to Interlibrary Loan? I don't see anything in the chat. So we're good there.
Thank you, Rusty. This was very helpful.
Sure, and I know, Suad, that you've used Interlibrary Loan before, so.
Yes.
Well-versed in all things Interlibrary Loan. And you're welcome, Candace. Thanks for the thumbs up, Matthew. All right, well, thank you guys for coming. I appreciate your taking the time out to learn about all these nuts and bolts and nuances related to Interlibrary Loan and resource sharing and all of that. So as I said, with all of our sessions, those recordings will be uploaded to our library's YouTube channel, and I'll send out the link for that within the next few weeks.
Thank you. Right. You're always so helpful. I must thank you for that as well.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you, Suad.
Thanks, Rusty.
Thank you. All right, you all have a great afternoon.
You too.